It's time to fire this thing up.
Welcome aboard ShipShape TV Essentials. This is your port of call for the most impactful upgrades, expert advice, and hands-on solutions from seasons past. This episode is proudly brought to you by SureHold, because anything worth doing is worth doing bright. From cleaning to protecting and perfecting, SureHold has everything you need to keep your boat shining. Don't just go boating, go showboating. Now, let's hoist anchor and set a course for another exciting episode of ShipShape TV Essentials.
If boating's your game, then you'll agree. ShipShape is the way to be. Out on the lake or on the sea, ShipShape means trouble-free. ShipShape means being neater. ShipShape makes boat work easier. ShipShape is the way to go. The ShipShape Boat Care Show.
ShipShape, America's favorite boat improvement show, is being brought to you in part by 94.3 The Beach, your station for rock and roll oldies, and by Atlantic Boat Lifts, servicing South Florida for over 27 years, and by J&T Yacht Sales, your main ship headquarters, and by Stella Marine in Palm Beach Gardens and Stuart.
Thanks for tuning in to ShipShape, the boat improvement show. I'm your host, John Greviskis, and this is my partner, Bertel.
Howdy, folks.
We're on location today in Stuart, Florida at Armstrong Nautical Products, and today we're going to take a look into putting a bracket on the back of a 25-foot Whitewater.
One of the advantages of having the bracket on the back of the boat is it reduces your noise levels.
It also opens up the back of your boat, increasing space.
And it keeps the boat drier when you're backing down on that fish.
As always, if there's a suggestion for a project that you'd like to see covered here at ShipShape, write us a letter or send us a fax.
Write down your inquiries and send them to ShipShape TV, P.O. Box 31561, Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, 33420. Or fax us your suggestions at area code 561-626-4348.
And remember, guys, if we use your suggestion on the show, you'll receive an official ShipShape t-shirt. But right now we need to hear a word from our sponsors, but you'll want to stick around because when we come back, we're going to show you how Armstrong builds the engine bracket.
Don't drift off. ShipShape will be right back.
The SureHold Soft Brush. Perfect for use on boats, cars and trucks, decks and patios, and even windows. Specially designed split-end bristles hold more soap and water for effortless and effective cleaning. Built-in safety bumper protects surrounding surfaces from accidental damage. The included 48-inch threaded wooded handle is sturdy, lightweight, and strong. Proudly made in the USA, the SureHold Marine Mate Soft Brush is the worldwide standard in deck brushes. SureHold. Clean and simple.
Welcome back. I'd like to introduce you to Tom Walsh out here at Armstrong. Tom, thanks so much for having us out today.
Good morning, John.
Now, you wear quite a few hats here at Armstrong. Can you kind of tell us what your role is?
Well, my primary responsibility is sales, but I have to get involved in design and fitting them and pretty much everything. Like you say, we wear a lot of hats.
Well, the reason we're out here today is we want to take a look into possibly putting a bracket on the back of a 25-foot Whitewater.
Okay.
Can you tell us the advantages of possibly having this bracket on?
Sure. Well, let me ask you a couple questions. Is it primarily a fishing boat?
Yes.
Okay. Well, probably the biggest reason people want to is to close in the transom.
Right.
You do gain some performance, but even if you don't close in the transom, it is better if you're backing down on a boat, for example. The bracket has a certain ramping facility that keeps the boat up, and your motors are 30 inches further off the transom, so it makes a better machine.
So it actually like planes a little bit when you're backing down on the fish?
It has a tendency to lift it because the bottom is sloped.
Okay, okay. Now, with the Whitewater, it's about a 24-degree dead rise.
Yeah, very steep dead rise.
What we're looking at is we have twin Mercs on the back, and it sits a little low. Now, is the bracket going to make it sit even lower?
No, because we can compensate for that. The basic bracket, depends on the boat, has around 300 pounds of flotation. The box is an air chamber that whatever's below the water is going to give us some flotation. On the Whitewater, we'll have to calculate it out. We'll probably make the bracket even a little deeper, maybe 45 inches deeper, and add another 200 to 250 pounds of flotation above and beyond our regular bracket.
So by making the bracket a little bit deeper, it's going to actually float a little bit higher. So maybe what we could do in the design process of this bracket is design it to not only keep its original line, but maybe to raise it up a little bit.
We'll have to calculate it out, but that's a distinct possibility.
That sounds good. What are some other advantages of having a bracket, Tom?
We do gain a little performance. The boat aerates the water just simply by passing through. So by moving the props 30 inches aft, you give those bubbles a chance to reach the surface, and the prop runs in a little cleaner water. So you'll gain at least a 4 or 5%. I've never seen one less than 4 or 5%. Sometimes as high as 10, but that's unusual. And with Whitewater, you're not going to get that because it's a good boat.
Well, let's take a look at how the bracket's actually put together.
Okay.
Now, Tom, this looks really interesting. What do we have going on over here?
John, this is the first step in the process. We got the bare metal, and it's been laid out. You can see the lines here. These are cut lines and the bend line here. We're going to go from here over the shear and do the first actual cutting on the metal.
Well, I'd love to take a look at that.
Okay.
This is some piece of equipment here, Tom. It's impressive. Tom, now that the aluminum is cut, what's the next step?
Well, next step, he's got to mark the hatch hole. So he's going to center punch here, and he's got to mark another hole over here because of stress relief for the wells. Go ahead.
The next step is to remove any excess material using a skill saw and a special aluminum blade.
John, the next step is we're going to use this center punch hole that we've drilled to drop a router pin in there, and we're going to cut a hole for our hatch.
Okay.
What he's done is putting some cutting oil in there so it doesn't bind as much.
Now that we have our hatch holes cut, we're going to go ahead and bend the bracket and get it ready for some welding.
John, this is where we start putting them together. As you can see, this is a really big bracket. It holds 4 250 horsepower motors, and it's going to Kuwait eventually.
Wow.
But the structure has to be super strong, obviously, so it's going to eventually have 5 plates on it, counting the side plates. And welding really has to be artistically done.
Now that we have our bracket welded together, it's time to do some cosmetic grinding. Now, a tip at home is to touch your stone with some beeswax. This will keep it from binding up.
John, this is the next step in the process. What we're doing here is we're using a polyester putty to fill any tiny little imperfections that's left in the aluminum so the paint shop has a really smooth surface to work with.
So this is your version of a body shop?
Yeah, quite similar. But John, I want to show you something before we go into the paint process. You notice the angle on the bottom of the bracket? That's what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about the ramping effect when you're backing down on a fish.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, what kind of paint process do you guys have here?
Well, it's pretty elaborate. We start off with an acid wash to keep the aluminum really clean, and then we use a allodyne, which is a real pre-primer-like, and then we use what you're seeing here now. That's 2 coats of a 2-part zinc chromate epoxy primer.
Okay.
And then what we use after that, we use PP Gelton. That's the top coat. That's what he's going to be spraying now.
Now, once the bracket's painted, it's time to put on some non-skid. Now, Tom, what kind of non-skid do you guys use?
We use a 3M product. We've been real happy with it. It's just a peel and stick product that just goes right on.
Now, this doesn't feel like the traditional non-skid that I'm used to. That's more gritty.
Right. No, this is a rubberized product because most of the time you've got bare feet on there and we don't want to sand your feet away.
Okay. Now, Tom, I know that you need the air cavity to help with the buoyancy on the back of the boat. Why do we have the hole here?
Well, you got a bolt to the back of the boat. So your bolt pattern here, this is your transom.
Okay.
So you have to have access to the bolts. And when you get ready to hang the engines, you have to have access to your engine bolts also the other way.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, when we're running the harnesses and everything, are we going to run them through the bottom here?
We don't like to do it that way. We would prefer to see them across the top. We don't like to cut any holes at or below the water line.
Okay.
No.
Now, that makes sense. Now, getting back into the cavity, once this thing is sealed and you have your, what do you do? Just put a catch on this?
Yeah. Well, you're right. It really has to be sealed. What we recommend to use 3M 5200 against the transom, which is a really good sealant adhesive. And then we have our own hatches. We couldn't find anything that was watertight. You'll notice it doesn't have a trim ring around it. This is the whole thing. The hatch has an O-ring around the outside, and it has a threaded T-bar in the center, so it just slides under and then tightens down.
So it tightens down from the center, and it evenly applies pressure to this O-ring and gives you a seal. You use a 5200 when you're sealing in on the transom.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you about storage. Can you store anything? That looks like a nice area for storage.
Well, you can, but we don't like to see a lot of weight back there. That's getting back to the flotation aspect of it. Once it's on the boat, your water line is somewhere along here.
All right.
So any portion of the bracket that's below the water line is providing flotation. You put an air chamber, you force it below the surface, it forces the whole thing back up.
Now I know today we're talking about a repower on the 25-foot Whitewater, but I'm looking on this bracket. This looks like you're making for the manufacturer, Hydrosport.
Yes, we are. As a matter of fact, that's about 70% of our business is directed to the manufacturers. Hydrosports is in North Carolina, as well as Regulator, who's also up there. And we do work locally in Fort Pierce for S2, the Pursuit, and West Palm Beach for Jupiter 31, as well as a lot of other small manufacturers.
So more and more of the boat manufacturers are actually coming to you.
Sure.
Because a lot of fishermen want this bracket. Now, what is this bracket here on the side?
This is for our ladder mount, welded right in. You know, this is one of our new ladders behind you there.
Now, I've heard a lot about these ladders, and it's kind of a unique design. What does it do? Just kind of slide down?
It just drops in, just like that. And then the ladder does float, so that's what this is for. You turn that underneath there, keep it from floating out on you.
Well, here we are back at the boat. What we've done is we've removed the hatch. Now, Bert, what kind of situation do we have here?
John, what we have an oil reservoir sitting in a big area. What we're going to do is take this oil reservoir out, stick it underneath the center console, and use this area much better. What we're going to do is make an insulated fish box here.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Both sides.
Excellent idea.
We'll drop in a bulkhead about here so we can still get our saltwater wash down and our fuel line run through. We're going to run them down the center of our stringers.
Okay.
We're also going to put in a different live well because the one in that one is much smaller. We're going to make a fixed live well. We've got rigging tubes that will run through the live well. We're going to cut out these old battery boxes.
Mm-hmm. How does the transom look?
The transom in this boat is really good. Me and Tom went over it, and it's solid.
Okay, great. Now it looks like there's a lot of oil residue in the bilge, Bert. How are we going to clean that up?
Well, what I'll do is I'll get a degreaser in here and wash this down because we don't want to have any oil residue when we do our fiberglass layups in here for making our fish boxes.
Well, that sounds great.
Chapman's Corner is brought to you by Chapman School of Seamanship.
Today on Chapman's Corner, we want to show you when and how to execute a mayday call. First of all, a mayday call should only be used in immediate emergencies, the ultimate emergency on board, such as a vessel on fire, a vessel sinking, someone that has fallen overboard and has been lost. The way we're going to initiate this mayday call is turn on your VHF radio to channel 16, and we follow the following procedure. Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Shady Lady, Shady Lady, Shady Lady. Give your call signs, Whiskey Alpha India 3048. My position is latitude 27 degrees 37 north, longitude 80 degrees 32 minutes west. I am on fire and sinking. I have 7 passengers on board. They have PFDs on board, and we're preparing to abandon ship. This is Shady Lady calling Mayday on channel 16. Over. From Chapman School of Seamanship, this is Tom Dante.
For the past few weeks, we've been talking about the fact that the dealerships have been bringing in the new 1997 models, and they've been blowing out at unbelievable savings the 96 models. With me again is Carlos Ruiz of Boaterama, and we're in the Fort Lauderdale store where we're not going to be looking at the Capri or we're not going to be looking at the 25-foot trophy. We're going to look at the real beefy 18-foot trophy Bayliner. Carlos, tell us about the boat.
Sure, John. This is the 1802 Walkaround Trophy. It's the smallest of the trophy line, but it's a big boat.
Absolutely, absolutely. What I like about it is it's a walk-around model, and you have a cuddy cabin, and that's really nice, especially when you're talking about if you have a family. You know, we've got some pretty intense sun here in Florida. It's nice to get out of that sun once in a while.
Sure, you know, for the kids and the wife, they need something to go under, and then the cabin is a very spacious cabin for an 18-footer.
Absolutely. The boat seems a lot bigger than 18-foot.
Sure,
I know you hear that.
Everybody comes to the store. Is this an 18? I have an 18, and it's not as big as this. This is a very nice size boat.
I like the way that Bayliner has integrated the transom. It gets the motor away from the boat. It gets the motor back, you know, out of the way. Let's talk about how the boat is powered, Carlos.
Well, it comes standard with a 90 horsepower force engine. You can upgrade to a 120 or a 150.
But let me emphasize that 90 is plenty of power, because with the 90 on this 18-foot trophy, you're going to go 33 miles an hour.
That's right.
That's a fast boat.
It is a fast boat.
That's a fast boat.
You see, what they do is they test code their boats, and they put a standard engine on it, okay? 90 is enough engine on this boat. You can upgrade, but you really don't need to.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the regular price of this boat, Carlos.
Well, regular price on this boat as a package, because Bayliner package everything from...
That's one of the neat things about Bayliner, is they do package everything together.
Of course, we were the first one to package boats together. That is, so you know, you get a boat that is the right trailer, is the right engine for that boat. This boat on the package is $18,995 plus your freight and prep.
Now that's the regular price. That's a very, very more than fair price. You know, people today will spend anywhere from, you know, $2,000, $3,000 a foot. Bayliner puts out a boat to where right around $1,000 a foot you're going to get a boat. But you're beating that price. We need to blow some of these boats out
I need space.
Okay.
I need space. My warehouses are full. Trucks are coming in. 97s are
Hey,
here.
I've got an idea. You need space. You need a boat. Let's trade.
Hey, I'm here to deal.
Let's talk about blowout price.
John, $12,995. No freight, no prep, boat, motor, and trailer.
Holy cow, you're talking $6,000 off this boat, but only if you act now. There's a few left. How does somebody get to preview this boat?
Okay, they can go to any of our stores. They can go to the Pompano store, we're in Federal, 1 mile north of Colton. Main store, Fort Lauderdale, 441 between Griffin and 84.
You're also in Miami on 135th and Biscayne, right on the water.
Right on the water.
Fantastic. Monthly payment, what is this going to equate to?
Okay, what we're doing is, on the discount that you're getting, we can use that discount
As a down payment,
as
right?
your down payment on this boat.
That's really cool. So you can get into the boat with really no money down.
No money down. A boat like this, probably like $160 a month.
Unbelievable. That's a very fair price. If somebody's at work, if they can't get down to Boaterama, how do they call you? Give me the number.
Area code 954-584-4700.
954-584-4700. Call Carlos. See this boat. It's a big, beefy, 18-foot fishing machine. You'll be glad you did. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. Make sure you tune in next week when Bert gets into de-rigging the 25-foot Whitewater. Thanks for tuning in.
See ya.
If boating's your game, then you'll agree. Ship shape is the way to be. Out on the lake or on the sea, ship shape means trouble-free. Ship shape means being neater. Ship shape